There we go. Okay. Ooh. No one can be told what Formulize is. You have to speak for yourself. Okay. All that for cute introduction. I'm going to show you briefly what Formulize is and how that works. And maybe I will turn on this way so that I can see what I do. So this is a demo Formulize system. It's got a few things in it, not much significance. And Formulize briefly is a data management system. It is a LAMP stack application. If you're a technical person, you might know what that means. And what you do is you make applications, data-driven applications. And so we can create a new form, start a new application. And I thought it might be good to make a form such as courses. If we imagine a course management system for alcohol, for example, something you're all familiar with, courses, students, courses would name, and we'll make a new application for this. We'll call it. There we go. So, make one form. Okay, we have one form. We could make another form. We could call it students. And that'll be part of the Oklahoma application. So we'll just, what we want to do with this, we want this form to represent people who have accounts in the system, because they'll log in on usernames and passwords. Exciting new feature in Formulize 8.2. This is the first time anybody's seen that one. But yeah, we automatically get, username, password, and so on, because we've said that this is a form for people with accounts. So any structure you might be managing, whatever your structure of users is, whatever your structure of data is, you can represent that. Let's go back to the students. I want to add one other thing here. So besides basic account information, we can add a special value to represent, say their student number or some student identifier. What we'll do here is we'll just pull in your user ID as a student number. And that should work. Let's see how that goes. And then you could do something, last bit of this, just to give you a little flavor of what is possible. We could add, say, a list to the courses. We could make it an autocomplete list called students. And we could say the source of the options should be where is it? Student, bringing that student number. You can have multiple students allowed. You can more than one student in a course. It's pretty boring if it was one student per course. Save that. And then this actually gives us some stuff that we can work with. So if we've got, say, students. So what happens by default, based on all that configuration, you get a front end. So we've got courses and students. We're going to add a student. We've got a basic form. We'll just fill in one. do that again for other students, you get the idea. But then with courses, you can say, you can imagine what happens next. We've got student 13, we want their name, of course, like we built this out fully, we want their name, all kinds of things, etc. But there you go. So you've got the courses with student 13, and conversely, this is one of the interesting things in Formulize. You've got the inverse as well. You've got the student and that. And I will have one more student just to emphasize one of the things here. So if we jump back to the courses, here we are, and we add, or rather, let's go back, just to this back to that one course. 14, add new student. There we go. Just to make it a little clearer. Oh, I'm probably getting that another way. Right. Oh, darn. There's a pop-up to pick different columns. I just want to bring in the one I think that will do. Yeah, there we go. So we got student 1, student 2. And on the student side, you've got the 2 students and the course. That might not seem that exciting, but the key thing database-wise is we've got one set of information and there's one piece of software, one query system underlying all of this. So here we've got 2 records because we're looking at a list of students and their course, same course is repeated. On this side, we've got a list of courses, so only one record, but that is put together. So this is one of the key things about Formulize is the way that it lets you represent data in different ways, depending on your perspective, depending on who needs to work with the data, in what way, you might need to set things up differently, or you might need to show, the list from one perspective or the other perspective. And we try to do everything from a very business logic-oriented point of view. Each student has many courses. There's a join in the database underlying that. But we try to present things in a very, at the level of what is the actual person who manages the data going to understand about this. Because the goal, as I'll talk about in a moment, was and is to empower non-technical people to build significant systems. There's also a significant permissioning system. You can organize users into different groups. There was a museum demo in here previously, so there's leftover groups from the museum system. But just to bring up the permissions so you can see the options. You can have differential permissions for updating, deleting, what people can view, and everything is split up into 3 levels: entries that belong to you, entries that belong to your group. So, students might only see student data, but the professors see everything, or whatever the case may be. Or you can turn on entries. Each of these operates at a global level as well. You can say, you can view all of these across the system. So the idea with Formulize is, as I said, to allow people describe how their application should operate in semantic terms that make sense for the application, rather than having to translate it into some technical programming language developers speak and And if you've ever implemented any projects, you know that there's often a gap there as the developers think they know what the clients want, but then the clients see it and they're like, no, like this. And if you can cut to the chase and just empower the clients to build their own system, then you eliminate that problem entirely. Okay, so that's a small taste of Formulize. Let's see if back and forth will work here. Yeah, you have to see it for yourself. Now you've seen it for yourself. Okay, so fun and exciting. Not a lot, not too impressive to just look at that level, but it would take days to cover all of the different configuration options. You can truly set up any kind of system that you might imagine. So the vision, as I was saying, society if nonprofits could control their own data. Wouldn't that be awesome? No more dollars wasted on big tech solutions. Buying, the amount of money that nonprofits spend on software that is inappropriate for them to use is staggering. But they do it because some big company, they heard company X is using, SharePoint, so we better use SharePoint as well. Oh my goodness, so much money down the drain. The small nonprofits without IT departments, a lot of big tech works great if you have an IT department to manage it for you. Most nonprofits don't have IT departments, and so on and so forth. So, there was this vision, as I was saying, of putting it in front of people who can benefit. So the essence of the vision starts with open source, zero licensing costs. Formulize is fully free open source software with the GPL2. So there's still hosting, training, and tech support costs. There's no such thing as a totally free launch, but there's no licensing costs, which is a big deal. Especially with stuff like this, if you compare to things like, Airtable or Salesforce, where you got this much per user or this much for each record in the database. Formulize free. And there's also still time, effort, and know-how required to make it all work. Because software by itself has never, ever solved anybody's problems. Software doesn't solve problems. If anybody tells you software will solve your problems, smack them in the head. People use software to solve problems. And that's the whole idea of Formulize, is to help people use the software better. Another part of the vision is configuration instead of programming. Developers are expensive. And you have that dangerous telephone game I was talking about earlier, where you got to explain something to them and they do stuff and maybe even explain it to another developer who then does something and it goes back through the food chain, and then you see some demo later and it's like, well, that's not exactly what I had in mind. That's a bad place to be. And the promise of the web, this all started in the late 90s. I could draw you a pedigree back to the beginning of the web. And at that time, it's like, the information superhighway, it's going to democratize information, it's going to make the world a better place. We didn't realize that by making information free, we would drive the value of information to zero. And then what's true? I don't know. It doesn't matter, does it? At least it doesn't anymore. It used to. Let's build a system, we thought, where people can control their own data and don't need developers. The other part of, and this is a little more subtle, but this was a key part of the vision, something we called the development commons. So you make 20 different systems, or 100 or whatever, you make all your different systems. They're different, but you build it on the same software stack. It's not actually a new idea, but doing it all through open source is interesting, because then everyone is an implicit collaborator in the open source project, even if they're not developers, even if they're just reporting bugs, even if they're just giving new feature ideas. It's wonderful working with real users, because they'll say things like, it would be better if it worked like this. And you go, it sure would. I never thought of that, because I don't use it day to day to do the things they're doing. But then, because it's open source, that idea can become a new feature. And then those new features that are required for Project X, well, they're going to get deployed to every other project too, because it's open source and everyone's sharing in the same boat. So the vision was to build a platform with these characteristics and capabilities. That was the vision. Reality check. Okay.
So Julian, can we
Oh,
just get a
yes.
bug check? Anybody here not know what open source is then?
That's a good question.
Give it a lot of
And there's no wrong answers. It's okay if you don't know. But they're throwing this around as if you do.
I think we're good with this.
We're good? We're good with this group? Online, and just briefly, in case, or anybody watching the recording. Are you recording this? Yeah, okay. Anyway. Open source software means, well, it's all about licensing. I say here in the reality check, nobody cares about software licensing, which is true, they don't. But open source is about licensing. Most software you pay a fee of some kind to download it, or you pay per user, or you pay something. Whereas open source is generally freely available, but most importantly, the source code that makes the software work is freely available. And so if you need to change it, you can. If you see a bug in Microsoft Word, you could report it to Microsoft, but are they going to listen to you? Are they going to fix it? Maybe, maybe not. Depends how important it is. Whereas with open source, theoretically, you can fix whatever you want. And this is the essence of the development commons, as I was talking about before. Because it's open source, anybody who's participating, everybody can share in all the benefits that everybody else is bringing to the table. And so there's sort of a virtuous circle behind that. Okay. But the reality check, open source, nobody actually cares about software licensing. We spent a long time, Commissioner said there's a few organizations that I've been involved in. One of them, way back 2003, co-founded Freeform Solutions, a nonprofit web consultancy organization to help other nonprofits. We spent a long time trying to figure out how to explain open source to nonprofits, to customers, to clients. Would they have this question or that question about licensing? Nobody asked. Nobody cared. Nobody cares. They just want their software to work. Newsflash about the clients, about non-technical people who are using software. They don't care about software. What they care about is the thing that the software is supposed to let them accomplish. So they just want the software to work so that they can accomplish that thing. That's it. And you take nothing else away from this whole thing. That is probably one of the best life lessons you could ever have, is realizing that nobody cares about what you care about. They care about what they care about. And you have to figure out what they care about and then try to meet that need. That's the secret to success, really. People don't want to have to figure out how to control their own data. All this, you can figure it yourself. You can figure it this way, that way, it'll do anything. Yeah, they just want their software to work. Development commons. Organizations love collaboration. We've certainly got mileage out of this idea that people would, you can share things back and forth, and everybody's contributing, and it's nonprofit, community, and blah blah blah. They love that kind of collaboration, especially if it costs them nothing. That's great. We can say we're participating in this wonderful virtuous circle, and it costs us nothing. But the thing is, you're trading the zero licensing piece of open source software. You're trading those costs for the upfront development costs of a new feature. Client has that brilliant idea. It'd be better if it worked like this. And you're like, oh yeah, it would. That'll take us a week of developer time to make happen. Do you want to pay for a week of developer time? You haven't had to pay for anything else. You're like, along for the free ride. Do you want to kick in a week of developer time to add that kick-ass feature, and then everybody can have it? Just like you've already got all the features that everybody else has already sort of put in? No, that's a tough sell. That really is a tough sell, especially with nonprofit organizations that don't have a lot of money. Again, people just want the software to work. They don't want other things don't happen. So the product that I've been dealing with for the last couple decades is consulting by the hour. I could talk to you a lot about estimates and time management and time tracking and invoicing, but it's all by the hour, not the platform. But we're getting there. As since the beginning. So one of the funny things is the question, how hard can it be? This whole thing is a fool's venture where a hero is here to tread kind of story. I have no formal technical background. I have a Bachelor of Journalism and Philosophy. I started work at Corel Corporation in 1996 when they bought WordPerfect. And basically, in 1996, you know, there was this thing called the World Wide Web, you might have heard of. And basically, to make a long story short, I ended up doing more and more tech things and stuff online because it was sort of inevitable at the time. So I profoundly underestimated what people would be able to do, let alone what they would be interested in doing. I did not, you know, how hard can it be? How hard is any of this stuff? I have actually, it turns out, but I did not appreciate in the beginning, some talent for some of these technical issues. But to me at the time, and especially in the beginning, it was like, well, I can figure it out. Surely you can figure it out. Anybody can figure it out. It's not that hard. How hard can it be? Actually, it's really hard for some people. And that was an interesting lesson. But that definitely sort of set certain things off on the wrong foot. Nonetheless, there was success. There's been success on some scale. There are some long-term deployments of Formulize over more than a decade. And all different sorts of things that people have used it for. Pretty much any data-driven application scenario you can imagine it's been used for. Contact management, attendance tracking, bookings, registrations, even just pure content management, anything with a database. And everything has a database, so you know. It's just really hard to sell software to people that does everything. What does your software do? Everything. Oh, okay. What is that? That's not very good. So, for more than a decade, there's been a few good things going on. But what about the next decade or two or three? That's where Formulize Incorporated comes in. Recently, actually formed a formal corporation to take over the work legally. And so instead of selling time, it's about time that we started selling Formulize as a product, as a platform, as the original vision. For all of these reasons, you know, how hard can it be in misunderstanding the audience, misunderstanding a bunch of things about what's going on. You know, Formulize is always, because of the consulting bent of things, ending up selling hours really, and consulting service rather than selling a product, meant that as a product, Formulize have been essentially neglected as a product for a long time. Totally worked, but if you just tried to put it in front of people and say, sure, can't you see yourself using it? It's like, no. The answer is no, you cannot. So we are, you know, we've been smoothing that over. The things that I went through just in a few minutes at the beginning would have taken half an hour or more in Formulize 7. So we've like really streamlined a lot of the configuration. So there's a lot of stuff going on under the hood. When you reference the students in the courses, there is a lot of stuff going on under the hood to make the database queries work and make, you know, when you go to the courses list, the students were automatically there. You know, you used to have to do all these things as their own configuration stuff. And now it just works. People want their software to work. It just works. So good. Yeah, version 8 has been focused on making things just work. And AI changes everything. Okay, so this is Formulize. Probably all too young for this, but this is Formulize on AI. Any questions? All right. Let me show you what I mean. All right. For the last year, we've been adding an MCP server into Formulize. And recently, in the last week, I have embedded an AI assistant interface into Formulize. So you actually used to have to do this through Cloud Desktop, but for the first time ever, I'm going to try doing it through the embedded assistant and see how it goes. So already turned on AI integration. So here's our Formulize assistant. I have my API key for Clode in here, key saved. I'm using, just going to use Sonnet, etc. There are various tools. These are all the tools of our MCP server. I should give a brief explanation. I'm sure some of you at least know what an MCP server is, but basically MCP is a technique or a protocol for letting AI interact with other systems. So instead of it just being like a chat window that you type in and you get back a response, the AI can actually reach out and connect with other systems and do useful things with those systems. So we wanted to add an MCP server to Formulize because we wanted, let's turn on everything. We wanted to basically allow people to use AI. Think about the whole point of this, right, is to empower people to use their own data. But you still have a learning curve with Formulize. And we've made it so much better with version 8. But you still have a learning curve. Whereas if you can just ask the AI to do things for you, that's even better. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Can you create 5 more courses and enter them in the database for us? Now, I'm deliberately being slightly vague here because one of the things about the embedded AI versus using an external AI like Cloud Desktop is we record your activity in the system and send that to the AI so it knows that I've created a courses form and it knows the courses that I've created in the form and so on. That's part of the context here. So, oh, there, it says it's done. Let's take a look. Go to the front page, let's look at courses. Oh, look, we got some more courses. Business communication, digital product. Web development boot camp, love it. Okay, thanks, Claude. So you can do anything. You can upload, this is an upload box. You can upload a spreadsheet of stuff and say, can you enter this, please? Or like whatever you would want to do. But you can also do things like this. Okay, we need help finishing the Algoma system. Can you add a professor's form and also fill out the courses form with more fields like a description and a year of student, I meant study. We'll see what it does with that. Garbage in, garbage out. Add context and who knows what will happen. And while you're at it, make a department's form. And each course should have its department recorded. So it's getting the form details, it's listing the applications, it's creating some forms, it's creating text boxes, list elements, creating a derived value. Derived values like the student number that I made at the beginning, and so on and so forth. Let's see what it's, making some linked lists, that's good. Yeah, I wasn't sure what it would do with the departments, but I was pretty sure that it would make a link element in the courses to reference the departments. Because behind the scenes, all the MCP tools have all kinds of description about how you configure Formulize and what linking things means and so on and so forth. So again, the AI gets all that information about how to configure Formulize, but you don't have to. So yeah, when it's all done, that was fast. It's like way faster than I can type. with AI is just so fast. Oh my God, it's so fast. Yeah, so we got professors forum, courses forum, everything's connected, blah, blah, blah. So let's just take a peek. So like, what does the course look like now? So there we go. It hasn't filled in data. I didn't ask it to fill in data, but yeah, we've got departments, but they're not showing up because presumably there's no departments yet in the department form, right? It's going to be empty. I could ask it to fill in more stuff. You know, you get the idea. One of the other things, actually, I do want it to do though, if it didn't already. Let me just see if it did. Students. No, it didn't. I'll just ask it to do one more thing. That's kind of fun. Excellent.
Julie, you want to start wrapping up? You can ask questions.
Yeah, this is the end. I'll just have it do one more thing. And you. Can you add a list of courses in the student form so it's possible to see the courses the student is in when viewing their form entry? So it's going to think about that for a moment. And so as you might imagine, the whole process of using Formulize is improvisation. And like, well, let's try this, and then let's add this. And then it's like, oh no, let's move this over here. There, done. It's added a courses listing. And so what that looks like, I just wanted to show you here, if we reload this, it should show up. You know, so one of the choices is, oh, it's not showing up. Really? Did it do it? Oh. Anyway, one of the things, well, one of the other critical things is, of course, it's not vibe coding, right? There's a real risk for anyone making software these days that whatever you're doing, whatever your software does, is going to, it's just going to be superseded, ignored, you know, by the world of AI just running ahead. And you know, why do people need your software? Because they can just vibe code something and we'll do it. The thing is, hopefully you all know that there are a lot of problems with vibe coding. I won't get into that just now, but this is a good example of why this is better. I asked it to create this course listing inside the student form. So it created the course listing inside the student form. For whatever reason, I have some ideas why, but it didn't automatically get added to the student. It created the element, but it didn't actually add it to the screen where the form is displayed. But because it's not vibe coding, what it's doing is it's using structured tools to interact with the system in a very structured way. It's not going to create things wrong. It's only going to do what the tools let it do. And what you end up with at the end of the day is a properly configured application. And I can look at it and say, yeah, I actually want to change this setting and this setting, and I want to add that onto that page. So I'm going to save that here. And then if I get back to the student form and go in here now, there, yay, courses. So here's the student profile, and there's the course that the student's enrolled in. So yeah, like that last bit is actually, I think, the real amazing key of this. You know, because it's all configuration based, the AI gets the full context of your application. Because it can just read the configuration and it knows how your application works. That's it. And if you build a totally different application in a totally different way, it'll figure that out too. Because the application is 100% defined by the configuration and Formulize. So the AI automatically just understands what you're doing. So the context is phenomenal that way. And it's not vibe coding, it's configuring things which you can then, you know, iterate on. That is basically it. Let me just switch back. There you go. There we go. So that was Formulize on AI. Hope that was exciting. And road ahead. Briefly, there's going to be version 8.3 later this summer with a new theme and more AI tools. Because it can't do things like set permissions and other stuff that we want to do. February 2027, there will be a full REST-like API tool. But most importantly, there will be installable applications. So all of a sudden, we'll actually have a product that people can understand instead of the software that does everything. But we've kind of done everything backwards. It's like if you wanted to open a bakery, well, what do you do when you open a bakery? Well, first you farm the wheat, and then you build yourself a flour mill to process the wheat, and so on, and then eventually you can have a bakery. That's kind of what we've done. It's all ass backwards. It's like we've built all the steps that you need, and that's one of the reasons it's so great with the AI. But until we get the installable applications, we won't be able to say, well, what does it do? Oh, well, it can do like registrations. Here you go. Here's a working application. Instead, it's like, it can do anything. You just have to make it do it. More outreach, better on-ramp. So, yeah, we're going to have on Formulize.net, what I showed you is all on Formulize.net, and I do offer hosting on Formulize.net, but we're going to have it more automated so people can just sign up, like you would expect with the software as a service offering. We're going to do a whole bunch of human versus AI YouTube videos, build an application manually, and then see what the AI does, and like compare the two. More documentation, more meetings like this one. We're sponsoring the Couple Days in Montreal in August 2026, and we're sponsoring Kung Fu in Montreal in 2027, which coincides with the two releases that we're planning. And so ultimately more community, more users, more customers. Notice users come before customers. I don't actually care that much about more customers. More customers is great, of course, but to build a platform to do the things that the vision calls for, more users, way more important than more customers. More features, more fixes, more surprises, good ones hopefully, and more successes. So I'm asking